So has it come to this? Are we witnessing the end of civility in politics? Is that a slight overstatement? Well, let's talk about it. And what's fueling all of the anger over health care reform? Joining us to tackle those issues, Mark Skota, founder and chairman of the Memphis Tea Party. Mark, good to see you. James Leach, chairman of the National Endowment for the Humanities. James, good to see you. And Liz Mair, tweeter, blogger, and Republican consultant. To all of you. But Liz, let me start with you.
Sure.
The N-word. Anti-gay slurs being yelled at Congressman Baby Killer yelled out on the House floor. What's going on here in your view, and who, more importantly, gets the blame for this ugliness? I hate to play the blame game, but a little bit of it here.
Well, I think what's going on is people are really angry, and I think a lot of people are unfortunately crossing a line, and they shouldn't be doing it. I think the people who deserve the blame are clearly the people who are saying and doing things that are inappropriate and in many cases probably illegal. When we're talking about violence, vandalism, threats, that crosses a legal line in addition to being in plain old bad taste. And I think that there's a lot that is in plain old bad taste that is going on. I do think it's important, however, to distinguish that from people making their very, very serious concerns about what has happened known and vocalizing that in no uncertain terms, you know, and making sure that people understand that. I do think there's a distinction between those two things, and I think it's important to not lump in people who are just ordinarily angry, who are upset about what has been done and want to express that in no uncertain terms with people who actually are crossing a line.
Mark, what's your broad take on this?
Well, I think, you know, one of the things, I do a radio show here in Memphis, and I've been very clear about this idea, first of all, making the changes at the ballot box, getting people registered. I think, frankly, anyone who crosses the line in suggesting vandalism or certainly any sort of death threats that may have indeed happened, just completely wrong. And Number two, I think the element here, in terms of the leadership that I deal with all over the country, I mean, people are really about getting people out to vote. Yes, they're antagonistic. Yes, they're angry about what took place. And yes, they're not happy about not being listened to. But I can tell you, the large number of people that I deal with, first of all, they will ostracize anybody who is on the fringes, number one, and they will remove them from their relationship. And secondly, I think people largely embrace the idea, let's have the revolution, but let's do it in November at the polls.
Yeah. James, your turn. Take a stab at this.
Well, there's a lot of reason for anger in America, and only one aspect of it is the health care bill. It became something that reflected that anger. But there's a real distinction between discourse, A, that goes into violence, but B, that breaks down people as being referred to as enemies rather than people holding rival ideas. And what we're seeing is across this country, we're seeing swastikas at California colleges, we're seeing anti-gay bashing, we're seeing members of Congress hit with racial epithets, with homophobic epithets. These are matters of real judgment for the American people to think through. And so some things are protected under First Amendment rights, but that doesn't mean that they're morally justified. And we have to think of ourselves as what kind of people. Are we one people working together with rival thoughts, or are we enemies within? And I think there's something that's been let loose in American politics that has to be thought about.
Okay, Mark, let me come back to you. Conservative radio and television and its role in all of this. This frenzy that many say was stoked by conservative radio and television. What do you think of it? Do you buy that argument? Was it all about ratings, ad dollars, money being the root of all evil here?
Well, I think, look, a lot of the conservative talk radio is about entertainment. You know, one of the things that we try to do, I think, and it's certainly in the work that I do, is to have a dialogue where you get people from both sides of the line questioning about what our country's doing. I think, honestly, at the end of the day, the anger has to be channeled. And I think even some of the some of the things that we're seeing, even on the suggestion that racial epithets have been shouted, you know, I want to see a little bit of objective evidence first of all, and we have to go back to remember that we saw people on the House floor, like former Bertha, who passed away.
Do you need to see the spit on the face, or what are we talking about objective evidence here?
Well,
you're questioning John Lewis, or what does that mean?
I'm just suggesting that I think in terms of the commentary, there's no evidence of that at this moment in time. I haven't heard it. I've looked at the videos, and I find it just problematic. I clearly understand also the question of whether it's Tea Party people that are engaged in some of this stuff or other people, and we'll have to wait and see. But I will tell you this much. Very clearly, in terms of all the membership that I'm engaged in, everyone, to a person, says, first of all, we won't accept and tolerate this kind of action by any of our members. And secondly, we will make our voices heard at the polls. The frustration and anger that we're seeing now post-bill, obviously, I think will settle very quickly. Having said that, we'll also wait to see who is in fact taking some of these actions. Who are the people that are actually undergoing these kinds of initiatives? I think when you look at, when you certainly look at some of the actions that we've seen thus far, unacceptable, completely unacceptable. And I have to tell you that we're even having conference calls around a number of the state leadership and folks in various organizations say, number one, let's first of all make sure we distance ourselves from these actions, and secondly, let us be very clear that when we take our actions, let's take it by registering people, getting them out to vote, and changing Congress at the ballot box.
So you're rethinking this. Okay, then one more question to you, and guys, I'll bring you back into the discussion in just a second here. Mark, does anyone believe, who you're associated with in the movement that you're a part of, that, for example, the sometimes unbelievable characterizations of the President of the United States, a man who is a symbol of great pride for many in this country, a man elected with 53% of the vote, that the most extreme, and I'm clearly talking about extreme here, caricatures of him made by some Tea Party activist make your opponent, the President, look more reasonable by comparison, even as there is a very serious discussion to be had on expansion of government at this moment in time in our political life.
You know, you raise a good point. Look, I like attending the rallies. There's a visceral release there. But I have to tell you, and one of the things I'm very clear about with my organization, the people I speak to, look, you cannot make them look better by making us look bad. The focus really needs to be on attacking the issues. I will not attack the individual. I will attack the issues all day long and be able to make the case. And to your point, I would like to see it spooled back, toned down a bit, but focused on rising up by getting huge amount of numbers of folks out and voting. I think Texas was a good example. We had a gubernatorial primary that had not seen 1.5 million people turn out in 40 years. That's where the Tea Party movement and the energy can be channeled and make a difference at the ballot box. So we're encouraging people, and we're working on this across a number of the organizations in the United States who are associated with Tea Party leadership to, one, get a message out that tones these things down, make sure people are responsible. And I think the vast majority of people share this view.
And Liz, let me have you jump in on this. What happens with the anger, the visceral anger that's out there? And it's palpable, it's real. How does that get channeled?
Well, hopefully it gets channeled constructively. I mean, you know, as we've discussed during this panel, hopefully that gets channeled into people who perhaps right now are not registered to vote actually going and registering to vote. People who are registered to vote actually going and voting and making their voices heard at the ballot box, and also ordinary citizen engagement. I mean, people can show up at protests and they can make their voices heard. But, you know, I think as plenty of Republicans, you know, in elected office have said, it's very important that if people feel strongly that the country is headed in the wrong direction, that they go and they actually volunteer for people that they believe in, people who they think are going to take it in the right direction. I think that's very important.
Let me jump in for just a second because we've got Eric Cantor. He is speaking right now. And let's listen to him on this whole topic of threats and vandalism following Sunday's health care vote.
Never be treated that way.